Another component of the project was a research. Research was conducted by Dr. Pauline Russell Brown of P.U.S.H and Associates on the effects of COVID-19 on female-owned businesses. And so she's invited at this time to share some of those research findings. Indeed, any kind of research is useful in guiding future actions. And so it would be important for us to hear her findings. Dr. Pauline Russell Brown.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Good to see some familiar faces in the audience. Sorry I can't be with you, but my heart is there. I'm going to ask that the presentation be projected. Thank you. Thank you very much. Notice we start by saying, come, we're open. And this is on an optimistic note, because we really hope that the women-led businesses can reopen very soon. The topic of the research is women-led business and the effect of COVID, experience of business owners in Ocho Rios, St. Anne. So it's limited to the Ocho Rios area. Next slide, please. Before I go into the findings of the research, there are some special thanks that I would like to extend, especially to the women business owners who were willing to speak with us and to provide the information that was necessary for this research. They were very accommodating. For the organizations which provided information on the women business owners, thanks to Northgate Youth and Family Development Foundation for giving P.U.S.H and Associates the opportunity to conduct this research. And most of all, I want to thank the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives for supporting not just the P.U.S.H project, but this research. Thank you very much, Canada Fund. Next slide, please. Northgate, as you know, NYFDF, with funding received from Canada Fund, implemented the P.U.S.H project, and you've heard all about that all morning. And the purpose of P.U.S.H is to target businesses in various stages of development that require technical guidance. This project was implemented, and I won't spend too much time on this, but to provide the rationale for the research. Next slide, please. The research is really guided by 3 objectives, and they're listed here. First of all, to identify the effects of the pandemic on women business owners, and I'm going to use the abbreviation WBO from here on, in the Ocho Rios area. The second research objective is to get a greater understanding of the impact of the pandemic on women-led businesses in the Ocho Rios area. And thirdly, to gather some information on what opportunities exist for the recovery of women-led businesses in the Ocho Rios area, St. Anne. Please note that this research was limited to the Ocho Rios area entirely. Next slide, please. Now, how was the research conducted? We conducted a survey of a sample of women-led businesses in the Ocho Rios area. We drew a sample of 26 plus 3 reserve. And in addition to this survey, we interviewed managers with financial institutions around, not just in the Ocho Rios area, but areas that would have institutions that would serve businesses in the Ocho Rios area. We interviewed 6 managers in all. And here I just list the organizations that provided us with the information from which we drew the sample of the 29 women-led businesses. And we are very grateful to them. It was not an easy process. And the interviewer who did the collection of the data, Elaine Wright, she is with us, and she can answer your questions on any aspect of this research that may come later on. Next slide, please. This is just to show you the breakdown. After much effort, we were able to get 184 businesses identified. And you will notice that most of them, the majority of them, were craft and curio vendors. We categorized some of these because they were single item, like electronics and computer. We had one. Arts and science, there were 3 organizations, and some others. We had a water supplier in that mix. We had health and beauty and legal. Our sampling, we wanted to get a 10% sample. And you may ask, why just 10%? We had time constraints, and time is one of the issues in research that often guides the size of our sample. But we were able to select 17 curio vendors out of the 29 altogether. You notice we have reserve. We did sampling with replacement for some of the groups that we know were very small. So legal, we had 1 reserve just in case we didn't get any of the 2 that we had identified. In the end, we didn't get anyone from that category. Overall, we got 19 interviews. These were business owners who were in business for between 5 and 50 years. So it's an average of 20, if you can do the math, just over 20, less than 30 years average, 25.4 years average in business. Next slide, please. Now, what effect did COVID have on these women-led businesses? 3 of the women business owners reported positive effects, but they made note that the positive effects were mostly personal, and I put some of these here. For example, the arts and the advertising business owner said, not for the business, but I had to be resilient. Okay, the staff remained loyal as they have not had a pay increase in 2 years. Blessed to have such a good team. The computer store owner said we gained some new customers, so it wasn't all bad. Customers who had outstanding debts cleared them. I started to sell things that I did not normally stock. What was really positive, though, was the lack of noise, and the quietness was lovely. And many of us can identify with that last part of the statement. So it wasn't all negative around the COVID pandemic. However, the majority of business owners reported having difficulties, and 18 of them out of the 19 we interviewed, so it's 95%, reporting having to close the business temporarily, they hope. Next slide, please. Now we asked business owners, having had the experience that you had with COVID, what action did you take? Now, what we found was that the responses we got can be categorized into 3 groups. Those who did not know where to go for help, and this may be an opportunity for push. The second category, women who were saying they would not be eligible. And one of the ineligibility statements was that this person had received money from the government already, 1, and this person also owed the UDC rent for the shop. So she didn't think she would qualify for an additional input from either government or UDC. And the third category of responses were women who said they would not be able to repay the loan, so they didn't even bother to approach a lending organization. Next slide, please. Now, if they would seek assistance, where would they go? And this graph just basically says 5 out of the group said they would go to a lending institution. 4 people said family. Family was an important source, but the same number of women said they wouldn't go anywhere. 3 would tap into government services. 1 woman each would use her personal savings, and 1 would approach the church for assistance to get them over this hump. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to the third objective, are there opportunities for recovery? And we would say yes, but are they accessible? To answer this question, we interviewed managers in the institutions listed here, and we have grouped them: commercial bank, building society, credit union, loan agencies, and an international financial institution. Okay. Next slide, please. Now, what we observe is that all these institutions had the same basic requirements when it comes to documentation for lending: valid picture ID, TRN, proof of address, then proof of income for a minimum of 3 months and a maximum of 1 year, proof of business registration, a minimum of 2 guarantors, and each guarantor needs to have provided a valid photo ID, TRN, and at least 2 pay slips, and above all, collateral: a house, motor vehicle, or life insurance that has a cash payout. So these were the requirements for all the financial institutions that we spoke with, that would be interested in or available to women business owners for financial support. Next slide, please. Some of the women have really a very negative perception of these lending agencies. Okay, and here we have just one quote: "As a female, financial institutions still look at us as weak. Men are able to access loans, etc., much easier." Okay, that's the perception of some of the women in the group. Now, it seems to us, having looked at the research results, that COVID has shone a very bright light on certain issues. First of all, the weaknesses in the system for women business owners. There's a lack of a sufficiently robust safety net. The support available from government is small and limited. And the assistance available from the commercial lending sector is there, but the practices do not accommodate the small business owner at all, who has income that is unpredictable. In fact, what we found is that there were a number of small business owners who sought assistance from the bank in which they had been customers for a while, but they were denied assistance. And given the requirements of the bank, we can understand why. But COVID has also shone a very bright light on the resilience of women business owners. I don't know if this applies across the board in Jamaica, but we have observed that the women business owners in the Ocherius area are particularly resilient. They have found ways to navigate during this time. And I think the next slide shows some of those ways. No, it doesn't. But some of those ways are relying on family. Some of the business owners we spoke with had gone overseas with 2 family members, and sorry, I'm in a noisy location, I'm sorry, and got support for themselves to survive. Others found other part-time jobs. There are others who, as they said, sought the church. One other person sought the church. And there are others who, in fact, one woman did baking to supplement her income. So these are women who want to continue their businesses and have found ways to do it. Based on the research information, it seems there were some missed opportunities, even though there was no financial support coming in. And this is where the women business owners focus. They focus on securing funds to help stay alive. But we believe that there are opportunities that presented themselves. For example, for continuing education through online seminars and webinars. And these could have been in self-advancement, personal development and personal improvement, business development, including diversification, which is an issue that I'm hoping some of our business owners will consider. And importantly, self-care. This is an area that was especially important during the very stressful early years of the pandemic. So some of these opportunities existed, and I think they were missed. Next slide, please. Now, the sample we looked at was very small, 19. And so you say, if you are a researcher, how can you extrapolate from that? But it does give us a sense that business owners are resilient. Many women who lead businesses in the Ocherius area are not aware about where they can get help. And there's a perception of gender discrimination. I want to point out here that a 2021 study of the banking sector done by Capri, that's the policy think tank that we have here in Jamaica, demonstrates that it's not gender that's the discriminating factor, but class. And when we look at what the lending institutions require, there's a clear indication that it may not be gender, but it is class discrimination. Next slide, please. Now, what can be done to address some of these gaps? And I'm making 3 sets of recommendations. There needs to be an increased advocacy role for the individual business associations and an increased member education role for those associations. And I heard Teresa talk about partnership and working together. I'm suggesting that success is more likely through partnerships. So all these small business associations may need to partner together to address some of these issues. Advocacy towards the ministry the ministry that supports business development in Jamaica, but also member education on basic issues. What's available? What resources are out there? What skills do I need to have besides the skill of making the curios, the craft? And the third recommendation that we would like to make is that we need increased engagement or involvement of women businesses in the running of their associations. So not to step away and hands off, but to be engaged and involved. Let voices be heard so that action can be taken when necessary. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for listening. And I'm not sure where the question and answer period will be, whether it's now or later on. But we are here, and Miss Elaine Wright, who did most all of the interviews, is also available to answer questions. Thank you very much.